We've all heard of the Islamic Dilemma, the idea that the Quran affirms the authority, revelation, and preservation of the Bible, yet it contradicts the Bible, so the Quran cannot be from God. Now this argument, it doesn't actually work because Islam does not teach the preservation of the Bible. Rather, it teaches that the biblical text has been corrupted to a certain degree. The Quran, the Ahadith, the Sahaba, the early Muslims, they taught this. Ironically, though, this very argument that Christians love to use against Islam actually refutes Christianity, because Christians do affirm the entire preservation and revelation of the Hebrew Bible, yet there are contradictions between the prophets and the Torah. The prophets will sometimes contradict the Torah, and the New Testament will fail the test of a true prophet, okay, that is laid out in the Torah, and the New Testament will also contradict the Torah. So the so-called Christian dilemma. Remember, Christians affirm the entire preservation and revelation of the Hebrew Bible, so we shouldn't see contradictions within it. And yet that's exactly what we see. Let's start with Jeremiah chapter 7. Remember, according to the Christian position, Jeremiah affirms the current version of the Torah we have. The Torah that Christians read and Jews read today, according to Christians, that is the preserved, authoritative Torah, and the version of Jeremiah we have is also preserved and revealed. So Jeremiah should not be contradicting the version of the Torah that we have today, yet that's exactly what he does. Jeremiah chapter 7, God speaks in Jeremiah, "For on the day that I brought your ancestors out of the land of Egypt, I did not speak to them or command them concerning burnt offerings and sacrifices." So according to this, when the Israelites were taken out from Egypt, they weren't commanded regarding sacrifices. Yet that's exactly what the Torah that we have claims happened. God gave revelation relating to sacrifices to Moses. For example, in Leviticus 8, Moses is given rules regarding offerings, burnt offerings, and so on. Point being, Jeremiah contradicts the Torah. And Amos actually says the same thing. "Did you bring to me sacrifices and offerings the 40 years in the wilderness, O house of Israel?" So again, this implies that Israel did not bring sacrifices and offerings in the time that they were in the wilderness. Yet again, the Torah that we have claims exactly this, that the Israelites in the wilderness brought sacrifices and offerings. This is what the Jewish Study Bible, an academic commentary, it's not a rabbinic commentary, it's an academic commentary. This is what it says on Amos 5. This contradicts the priestly tradition reflected in the Torah, which suggests that offerings were a crucial part of the wilderness experience. So again, Christians say that the entire Tanakh is preserved and authoritative. So Amos and Jeremiah, according to them, bear witness to the authenticity and preservation of the version of the Torah that we have today. Yet, Amos and Jeremiah contradict the version of the Torah that we have today. Ergo, you get the Christian dilemma. So according to Christian tradition, Jeremiah can't be a prophet, and Amos cannot really be sent by God. Here's a look at another prophet, Hosea, and he also is going to contradict what we have in the Torah. "Therefore I will now persuade her and bring her into the wilderness and speak tenderly to her. From there I will give her her vineyards and make the valley of Achor a door of hope. There she shall respond as in the days of her youth, as at the time when she came out of the land of Egypt." So according to this, the early period of Israel's history, the period in the wilderness when they were taken out of Egypt, that was a honeymoon period where Israel responded to God. And Jeremiah chapter 2 says the same thing. "Thus says the Lord, I remember the devotion of your youth, your love as a bride, how you followed me in the wilderness, in a land not sown. Israel was holy to the Lord, the first fruits of his harvest. All who ate of it were held guilty. Disaster came upon them, says the Lord." Okay? And yet, anyone who's read the Torah knows that the Torah says that the generation of the Exodus were very evil people. In fact, they weren't even allowed into the land. God decided that all of them would die without coming into the land. In Exodus chapter 32, they actually, as we know, worship the golden calf. What God says regarding it, in Exodus 32 to Moses. He says, "I've seen this people, how stiff-necked they are. Now let me alone so that my wrath may burn hot against them and I may consume them." And Israel do many such sins in the Torah. So this is what the Jewish Study Bible says. Okay, this is regarding Jeremiah, the text we just read. God recalls the early period of the relationship with Israel in the wilderness as an ideal time, much like the northern Israelite prophet Hosea. So according to Hosea and Jeremiah, the time of the wilderness was an ideal period. In contrast to the northern prophets Jeremiah and Hosea, the Zedekite priest and prophet Ezekiel and the wilderness traditions of the Torah depict the wilderness period as a time of Israel's rebellion against God. So, whereas Jeremiah and Hosea say that the wilderness period was this ideal period, Ezekiel and the Torah actually say that the wilderness period was a period of rebellion. That's what the New Oxford Annotated Bible says regarding Hosea. Allure her courtship language, the wilderness signifies Israel's early years after the Exodus, remembered here in terms of the marital metaphor as a honeymoon. They also quote Jeremiah. So were Jeremiah and Hosea true prophets? If you're going to say that the entire Tanakh is fully authoritative and fully preserved, and Jeremiah and Hosea and Amos, etc., they confirm the authority and preservation of the very Torah that we have today, then they should not be contradicting the Torah that we have today. Otherwise, you get the Christian dilemma. In Ezekiel 18, we're going to see Ezekiel contradicts the Torah. "The word of the Lord came to me. What do you mean by repeating this proverb concerning the land of Israel? The parents have eaten sour grapes, and their children's teeth are set on edge. As I live, says the Lord, this proverb shall no more be used by you in Israel. Know that all lives are mine. The life of the parent, as well as the life of the child, is mine. It is only the person who sins that shall die." And if you read the entire chapter of Ezekiel 18 is arguing that it's the person who sins who is going to be punished. Yet, of course, this contradicts the Torah in Exodus chapter 34. God is described as by no means clearing the guilty, but visiting the iniquity of the parents upon the children, and the children's children to the third and the fourth generation. And this is what the Jewish Study Bible says regarding this in Ezekiel. The prophet disputes the view that Israel's punishment is due to the sins of past generations. Instead, each individual is responsible for his or her own actions. Contrast the Decalogue, Exodus chapter 20, verse 5, Deuteronomy 5:9, which indicates that God visits the guilt of the parents upon the third, upon the guilt of the parents upon the children, upon the third and upon the fourth generations of those who reject me. So they are saying Ezekiel is contradicting the Torah. So was Ezekiel a prophet? Because if you're going to say that all of Ezekiel is preserved, all of Jeremiah is preserved, all of Amos is preserved, all of the Torah is preserved, if they contradict, then you get the Christian dilemma. Now, just a caveat, I don't believe that Jeremiah and even Jesus, as we're going to see, did believe that the Torah was corrupted, but that's the Christian position. They believe that all these prophets said that the version of the Torah we have today, that it's fully preserved and fully authoritative. So this is what this is from the New Testament now regarding Jesus, and we're going to see a different sort of example. So in Matthew chapter 16, Jesus says, "For the Son of Man is to come with his angels in the glory of his Father, and then he will repay everyone for what has been done. Truly, I tell you, there are some standing here who will not taste death before they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom." Okay, so some of the disciples are still going to be alive when the Son of Man comes with the angels and whatnot. Yet, of course, obviously this didn't happen. Jesus didn't come back while some of the disciples were alive. All of the disciples have died. So Jesus here, according to the version of Jesus that we have in the New Testament, this obviously is a saying that people have made up and ascribed to Jesus because it's a false prophecy. This obviously contradicts the test of a true prophet in Deuteronomy 18, which says, "How shall you know a true prophet?" Basically, you look at his prophecies. If his prophecies come true, he's a true prophet. If his prophecies do not come true, if they are false prophecies, then he's a false prophet. In the Gospels, Jesus makes this false prophecy that the Son of Man is going to return in that generation when some of them are still alive, which obviously fails the test of Deuteronomy chapter 18. So you get the Christian dilemma. So is Jesus a prophet? Obviously, I believe he's a prophet, and there's even a Christian tradition which indicates that Jesus actually believed the Torah was corrupted, but that's not the standard Christian position. The Orthodox Christian position is that the entire Tanakh and everything is preserved. What about Matthew? Was Matthew inspired by God, as Christians claim? Well, this is what he says. In Matthew chapter 2, he says there is a prophecy of Jesus in the Old Testament which says he will be called a Nazarene. Unfortunately, this prophecy is actually not present in the Old Testament. For example, the Oxford Bible Commentary says the most difficult verse in the passage is the very last. He will be called a Nazarene does not appear in the Old Testament, yet Matthew refers to the prophets being fulfilled. So is Matthew truly inspired by God? Because if Christians are going to say that Matthew confirmed the preservation and revelation of the Tanakh, the Hebrew Bible, yet here he claims some things in the Tanakh which is not actually in the Tanakh, then you get a contradiction, you get a Christian dilemma. The only way out of this is to say that actually there has been a level of corruption to the Bible. Whether it's the prophets like Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Amos, who says he's not a prophet, but anyway, Amos, Hosea that have been corrupted, or it's the Torah that's been corrupted, or both of them have been corrupted, and the New Testament's also been corrupted. Whatever choice they go with, they would have to say that a portion of the Bible has been corrupted. Of course, they don't say that. It's the Muslims who say that. So the very argument they try and use against Islam actually refutes them, and it does not refute Islam, because Islam, in contrast to Christianity, actually teaches that there is a degree of textual corruption when we're looking at the biblical texts.